present Having Fun with iPad apps. Lauren is a pediatric occupational therapist with over 25 years of experience working with children with special needs. She is currently employed at the Schwartz Center for Children in Dartmouth, Mass. as the director of the Regional Consultation Program and Family and Community Liaison. Lauren provides resource and referral information and training and consultations to families, preschools, and child care programs for children with complex medical needs. She has developed a special interest in the iPad as both a means of communication and a great source of fun for children of all abilities. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lauren Meatty.
Good morning. So what I'm going to do today is kind of run you through a whole bunch of apps that we use with children with special needs. I'm going to give you a little story about how I started this and what got me interested. I was one of those people who had the phone initially that actually plugged, and now most of you are not going to remember these, you actually plugged your phone into your car, and that was state of the art. Few years ago, my husband, who works in IT, says, you have to have an iPhone. An iPhone is going to change your life. And I'm like, it's a phone. I say, hello, yep, okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes, bye. And that's about where I use my phone. Kept pushing, goes, you got to see this thing, you got to see this thing. And I'm like, did you see the price of these? Forget it, we don't need an iPhone. So he came home from work one day all excited. He said, we can get a 2-for-1 iPhone deal through my work. We can get the special plan. Will you at least go look at it? And I'm like, all right, I'll go look at it. So I'm there, and the guy was wonderful, and he's asked me what I did, and I told him, and he's like, he starts showing me all these things the iPhone can do, and I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. All right, it's a good day, and he kept going through and through, and I said, all right, I'll get one. This sounds like a good idea. So then a few months after that, the iPad came out. And by now I was like, oh, the iPhone is really cool, the iPod Touch, really cool, but it's really small. I can't really use it a whole lot with the kids that I have. I work with kids who don't often have a lot of physical mobility, who don't have communication skills. I was like, how am I going to use this tiny little thing with them? So then I found the iPad. And I got one, and I was kind of playing around with it. And one day I went out to see a little girl who was 2.5 years old. This is my little friend who has spastic quadriplegia. She's very, very tight. She has limited mobility. Her hands are fisted. Usually she can't open them when really motivated, but she tends to be very fisted. Her house looks like FAO Schwartz. Every single toy available, mom bought, grandma bought, aunts and uncles bought, trying to find something that this child would engage with. And everything sat there. You know, I think they had stock and battery companies for every toy that they had. So I said, do you mind if I try something? And Mom's like, oh, we're not going to be able to afford one of those. She's not going to be able to do that. And I said, well, I just want to try. I want to see what she'll do with it. So she started off. I brought this out, and I went, and she kind of looked a little bit. And I put her hand on it, and she used her fist initially, and she went. And then her whole hand started to open up. And she started touching this, and she started looking at it, and next thing I know, her other hand opens up. And she is now using one hand, and all I'm doing is one finger. And she could play a song, and she was vocalizing, she was singing. Her mom's like, I don't care how much that is, where do I get it? And so we started trying other things, and she, for the first time, could operate something, could activate something, was so interested in what is happening when I touch it. And I'm hearing music, and I'm hearing sounds. This also, I'm just going to show you what else this program does, is a piano. And we can have all different kinds of keys. But then we can also just have a regular keyboard. So then we were working on trying to get her to poke with her finger and play the keys. But you can set that program, that's called Magic Piano. And you can set it so with one finger, a child is able to play. There's a whole variety, I think it has, I don't even know how many songs. But it's a one finger access for somebody who has such much limited mobility who could start accessing. So I was like, well, that's really cool. All right, so what else can we do? So what I'm going to do is kind of take you through, I work a lot with preschool age, so most of my apps, most of the programs that I have are for a younger population. I also did, I'm not doing right now, but when I was working at the Schwartz Center, I worked in their rehab program as well, so I did have some school age kids. Another program I'm going to show you, I'll show you a little later, some of the things that I was working on with handwriting for school-age kids. One of the things I've really discovered about the iPad is kids who won't engage with other things. For some reason, the iPad is bringing them in. And that was one of the things they really focused on that 60 Minutes episode with the children with autism, which we're seeing a lot. There is something about this little box that just brings kids in. One of the things also that we have found as we're using this, I did a presentation a while ago for a group of parents, and there was a mom there of a child who's in middle school. And what she told me was the iPad has totally changed her daughter's life because her daughter has special needs. She's in a wheelchair. She has some communication skills, very bright, but just does not speak well. And she used to have, this big communication box on her desk, and it was one more thing that made her look different than everybody else. And she hardly ever used it because she was embarrassed, because every time she used it, it drew more attention, and she was really not wanting to draw attention to herself. She got an iPad, and all of a sudden she was the cool kid in middle school because she had an iPad, and everybody wants an iPad in middle school. Everybody wants an iPad that I meet. But all of a sudden she had something that now brought kids to her instead of driving them away with one more strange thing on her desk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some different apps for different categories. At the end, there'll be time for questions. This presentation I do is usually, I usually do this in 2 hours. So I'm going to try to condense as much as I can into a 1 hour slot. If people have questions at the end, try to save them for then. If you have something that's absolutely pressing, you're not sure how you can go on without your question answered, then you can ask. But like I said, I want to try to get through as much as possible, so we want to keep things rolling. I'm going to show you, there's a whole category of programs for preschoolers called Duck, Duck, Moose. These should all be familiar songs to you. So Wheels on the Bus. Now, a lot of times we do circle times with kids, and we pass books, and we do our hand gestures, our wheels on the bus go round and round. Or have kids who can't do that, but there's still other ways that they can access those same things. So here's my bus, and he just sits there. With my one finger, I can say, let's make the bus go. And now my bus goes forward, and we can do backwards. And the bus can go forward and back again with one finger. We can turn the page.
The doors on the bus go open and shut, open and shut, open and shut.
And again, one finger access, we're opening that. This is kind of cool, because anything I touch, something's going to happen. So for kids just learning cause effect, as they're moving things, as they're just touching, different things are going to happen on the screen. I'm going to show you another one similar to that. This is Itsy Bitsy Spider. And this isn't going to do anything until I touch my spider. And as I touch things, different things are going to happen.
One.
And he's going to count.
Clouds are made of water.
You get a little science lesson in there.
Full of water, it rains.
And it's funny, when I use this with different age kids, some kids will be like, what does that do, what does that do, what does that do, what does that do? And they just want to touch everything. Other kids will kind of watch and look and kind of say, okay, what happens if I touch this? What happens if I touch that? That all kinds of different things are going to happen just with that one finger access.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on this farm he had a chicken, E-I-E-I-O. Old MacDonald had a farm. I would just like to say, E-I-E-I-O.
This one's a little strange.
I would just like to say,
So you have a little alien invasion in the middle of it. Not usually what happens when you sit and you sing Old MacDonald with your preschoolers. So there's a whole bunch of those. Again, they're interactive things that we do with really young children. One of the things that often comes up when we're talking about using electronics and using any kind of media with young children, I always say, I would never just hand this to somebody and let them play with it and let them do it. That you really want that interaction. You don't want this to replace the social interaction. You don't want it to replace that back and forth communication. So as I'm using this with children, we're always talking about what's happening back and forth. I do a lot of prediction. What do you think will happen if we touch this? What do you think is going to happen? Where'd the cow go? And of really kind of talking through it. So we're not just pressing buttons and there's no interaction. We look at, especially with young children, when we're using using anything. I don't recommend these for everybody. And we're really looking at when is it appropriate and when do we want to bring this in for kids. I look at it often for kids who don't have access to other ways of doing this. This may be a nice way for them to access. There is, let me just show you a few other music programs. I showed you that was Magic Piano. This I have some of my older kids love. Not a drummer. But again, I use it a lot for some of my older kids that I'm working with, not to play drums, but I have a lot of kids who are working on isolated finger point, or we're working on doing things with two hands. And this may be one way of getting them to do that. So it's not necessarily that I'm teaching them to play drums, but I'm trying to find another way to get them to point. Because pointing, as you see, as we get to some of the older programs and apps, pointing is key. Most of the things you're going to do with communication on the iPad involve two motions, one touching and the other is sweeping. So a lot of these younger programs that I'm using, that's essentially what I'm trying to teach, is point and move your finger. I'm going to go into a whole bunch of communication apps that I use. Some of these are very basic, some of them are a lot more complicated. A lot of children are beginning to learn sign language. And sometimes I use a lot, this one with parents will put onto their apps or their phones because they're learning sign and they can't remember every sign. So this program will actually teach you the signs. And it gives you a nice picture so you actually can see the signs. So if you have kids who are just learning to sign, or you're just learning to sign, it's a nice reminder of what some of those signs look like.
Birthday.
There's a program, I'm just going to kind of go down my list here. Going Places is a social stories program. So I don't know, are any of you familiar with social stories and using social stories with children? Okay. There's a whole bunch of different apps that have built-in social stories. I'm not crazy about them. I like to do my own, but there are some already made. So if you're not familiar with social stories, I'll show you one.
Haircut. I wait my turn quietly. I sit, we're okay. This is the hairdresser. I sit very skillfully. The hairdresser wets my hair. This feels good. He cuts my hair with scissors. He uses clippers too. All done. That was easy.
So essentially for a child who's never had a haircut, you can kind of show them pictures of what's going to happen, go through the steps. This program, Model Me Going Places, has about 6 or 7 of them built right in. One of my favorite programs is called Yes, No. I work with, at the Schwartz Center, we have children from 3 to 22 with pretty significant disability. One of the key things that we're working for every student at our school is to have a way, and I think it's key if you think about your whole life, is to have a way to say yes and no throughout the day. To be able to, do you want this? Do you hurt? Are you sick? Do you want a drink? Anything that you can ask. And this is a simple program that you can just...
Yes. No.
You can program this. What I like about this is I can also, so it's snack time and we have a choice. Do you want milk or juice?
Milk, please. Juice, please.
I have a lot of kids who love to run away, who love to, and one of the things, there's 2 things we use. A lot of times kids respond very well visually, so we have stop signs on doors that just so when they get to it and they see the stop sign, hopefully it's going to stop them long enough that they stop and somebody sees them. But we also play stop-go games. This one's not talking right now, but I can program that to say stop and go, so we can be doing something and I'll have kids, run, and then hit stop and everybody has to stop, and then hit go and everybody has to go again, just to, again, teach that concept. We can program, this actually has 7 different pages, so I can program the choices anything I want. So I just put in the milk juice sample. You can put pictures on these. So if you have a child who's more using pictures, you can take pictures with your iPad and you can make your program with the actual picture of milk or a picture of juice or a picture of a ball or a picture of a car, whatever it is they're working on, whatever they want, we can have those pictures on there. What I like about this, as opposed to some of the other programs I'm going to show you, is it's very simple. There's only 2 things to hit. It keeps choices for kids who are first learning that choice making and simple pointing. It keeps things very simple. So I use yes, no a lot. One of the programs I'm going to show you, I was talking about, I hope I'm going to show you, is called Sonic Pics. And Sonic Pics is a program you can use to make your own social stories. And it may not work in here. So last night I was telling somebody before, it's not going to work. All right, I'm not going to be able to show you Sonic Pics. I don't think. We'll try again. Sonic Pics, you can take your own pictures. So last night, this was my 9-year-old. I told him to go in the other room and tell me a story, and pick some pictures and tell me a story. One of the coolest things I have found about iPads is kids aren't afraid of them, that you can give these to kids, and I give it to my 9-year-old. I didn't give him any directions other than, here, figure out how this works, go in the other room, tell me a story about these pictures. And 5 minutes later, he's like, okay, I'm done. I don't know if you like it. I'm like, okay. I'm going to see if it works. It may not.
Beast at Batman. Right there. Yeah, I'm the beast at Batman. And that's me with my iPod Touch. And there's snow out.
That was his birthday last year.
And this is me holding an iTunes gift card because I didn't have any money at that time. I was wearing a fishing vest for no apparent reason. And that's pretty much it.
What we do with that program, like I said, I don't know what he was going to do with it. What I like to do with that program actually in our school is we have a few kids who bring iPads with them to school. So if we're doing a special event, if we're doing a special activity, we may take pictures of the child throughout that activity and then have the teacher or somebody in the room who's verbal then narrate the story. As you can see, once I hit go, it just kind of plays itself. It's really easy to do. You put your pictures in. As you touch the picture, you talk. You move to the next picture, you talk. You can put up to, I believe it's 12 pictures in there to kind of create a story of what you're going to do, what you did. The cool thing about that is one of the ways that we use that is to then take those stories and then you can email it. So we can take that and you don't have to have an iPad at home to use it. I can then email that story home to mom so she can see what we did in school that day. So that's just one of the things, one of the ways we're using Sonic Pics. We do use it, some of our classrooms are using it for social stories. One of our classrooms we have a group, a living skills group that actually goes out in the community on field trips. They go to the grocery store, so beforehand they will send somebody to the grocery store and take pictures. These are the things we're looking for, so then they can show the kids. We're going to go to the store, we're going to buy milk, we're going to buy eggs, we're going to buy whatever flour, we're going to come back, we're going to make a cake. And so they already know when they get there what they're looking for, and then as they see the things, you know, they'll bring the iPad with them, and then they can start recognizing those things that they saw in pictures to kind of expand on those skills a little bit. Speak It is a program. I actually had a college student come to me because she knew I was doing things with the iPad, who was verbal but had a very, very quiet voice. And she couldn't participate in classes because no one could hear her. And she was concerned. She said, I never raise my hand because no one's going to be able to hear what I say. How can I participate? And so, we kind of did a little assessment. It's like, what skill? She's like, I can type. I actually type really well. So Speak It is a program that if you can type it,
hello and welcome to Having Fun with iPad Apps.
it will then speak. It's a computer voice, so it's not a great voice. But so I have, again, this was for a young woman who had just happened to come by for something else, and someone said, oh, you need to go talk to Lauren, and she'll help you. So what we were able to do is this program, and I think this is 99 cents. It was very cheap. I think maybe $1.99. Because she was looking at all these really expensive communication devices and trying to figure out which way to go. And so for $1, she already had the iPad. For $1.99, she was then able to participate in class, and she was so excited. She came back a few weeks later, and she said, I did it, I answered a question. And so it was just one way of giving her a voice in a large room. So that was kind of cool. And this you can kind of program, you can type in whatever you want, and you just hit a button, and it will speak what you have to say. There are all kinds of programs that are already built in. This is called Tap to Talk.
I'm hungry. I want some fruit. Strawberries, please. Banana, please.
So these are already programmed. You can't, the problem with some of these apps, and I'm going to explain the difference between some of them, that I just showed you, Tap to Speak, is free. Not very customizable. It only says certain things. You can't do a whole lot with. There are tons, thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of apps out there right now. And I'll talk a little bit at the end if we have time about where to find them. But one of the programs that I'm now going to show you is almost $200. And the difference between this and what I just showed you is this is very customizable. This is huge. I can have hundreds of programs on here. This is called Proloquo to Go. This is the program that was featured on 60 Minutes the other night.
I need something to eat. Fruit. Grapes. I need grapes. I want to listen to music. I want to listen to music.
There are hundreds of ways you can use this program for communication. It's very involved, it's very in-depth. In fact, there are YouTube videos on how to use Proloquo to Go. They have an entire website with tutorials of how to use their program. It can do so many things. I have very few kids right now who are actually using this. We're using, a lot of the kids that I'm working with are using much less involved programs, but this is a really nice one if a child really needs a more in-depth communication system. This does pretty much everything. You can change the voice, you can change you can have it in women's voice, men's voices. You can have a British accent if you prefer. You can have kids' voices. I'm pretty sure you can actually program a voice yourself into this one, so you don't have the computer-generated voice as well. There's a new program, very similar, that someone came in. One of our staff came by last Monday. I had just walked in. She's so excited. There's a free program. It's going to be $100, but it was free Friday morning. And I said, it's Monday. She's like, I know, but it still might be free. No, it's not still going to be free. What happens is there's a program, if you're interested in apps, there are two, and if you're on Facebook, or they're also online. One is called Moms with Apps, and the other is called Babies with iPads. And both these sites on Facebook have free Friday mornings. And they will find people who are either developing new programs or at Halloween, there's tons of them. Yesterday there were tons of Halloween programs out there that you can download for free. They give you the codes on Friday mornings to get free. So this program called SonoFlex was free on a Friday morning. And it's similar to, I didn't get the free version. So I do have, there is what's called a lite version, which was free. So I have this, which is the lite version. It's not programmable. I can't save things. It's good if I'm just teaching somebody. But what I like about this is I can set themes. So you can see over here in this right-hand side, we can have an about me, a playground theme, a circle time theme, an art theme. So if I'm doing an art project, I can set this up. So all my colors are there, all my art things are there, everything I'm using for my art project I can have in the pictures. If I'm doing, if we're going out to the playground or going to the gym, then we can have the playground, we can have seesaws. So we can kind of customize that a little bit. We can also, there's a way to set up an About Me page. So
my name is Lauren.
You can program that for that specific child. We have a lot of people wanting to have customized pages for their kids. And in both Proloquo to Go and this program, you can then customize pages, and you can go into, on the full version of this, you can buy the full version, and then you can have, my name is, I am however many years old, my favorite color is, so they can kind of tell something about themselves as well. Whenever, and I see this all the time, when somebody meets a child for the first time, the first thing everybody, hi, how old are you, and what's your name? And the kids who aren't verbal have no way, they stand there, and then the mom starts answering for them. What we really want to do is give a way for kids to answer those questions themselves. Walking around with an iPad, an iPod Touch, which is the smaller version, is a way to give kids that voice themselves, giving them that independence. We can set these up so a child can go into McDonald's and order their own meal, or I always say McDonald's, but can go into a restaurant and then order for themselves. And if you know what you're doing ahead of time. So we had, again, our living skills group was going out. Before they went out, they had the kids look at the menu, so they kind of knew what they wanted. Then they were able to set up the iPads. So once they got there, everybody could order for themselves. The waitress was floored, going, "What is that thing? How did you do that?" Because she was like, "I've never seen that before." But it was great because the kids could then go in and they didn't have to wait for the teacher to order for everybody. They could each have their turn and order what they wanted, which was, I thought, was really cool. There's a couple, these are kind of fun programs. That's not the one I was looking for, though. Hold on. Sound Touch. Sound Touch, again, I use this for a lot of the younger kids. I was using this a while ago with a set of triplets. They were triplets, they're around 2 at the time, and they're all at very different levels. One was verbal, one had really good receptive skills, understood everything you said, but wasn't quite verbal yet. And the third one was still really working on receptive language and communication. So this was something I was able to do with all of them. So the first one I'd say, "Where's the cat? Can you show me the cat?" And she went, "Cat," right there. So her brother, who is not verbal, who was just learning language, I would say, I'll call him Sam for now. "Sam, where's the cat?" Well, he can't miss. He got the cat. So he could be successful too, is what we were looking for. So then I'd ask his sister, "Where's the cow?" What I really like about this, I went again, "Where's the cow?" And he could touch the cow. Each time I touch the cow, we get a different cow. And we go to our dogs. What I like about this is it teaches generalization. A lot of times kids learn, especially with a lot of things, that every dog, this is a dog and that's what dogs look like, and this is a cat and that's what cats look like. This shows you, dogs look different. There's all kinds of different dogs. Of course, then I have the kid who's verbal. "I want the shepherd." I'm like, well, we're going to have to wait like 6 times before we get him back. But it's one of those things we find with a lot of programs, even with a lot of books and picture books, they show you one thing, and that's what it looks like. So I like this program because it does help with that generalization, that they're not all the same. Also within that, we can have instruments, and they're real instruments. So it's nice sound, and it's real. I like the saxophone. And then there's also things around the house. And again, they're realistic sounds, which you don't find in a lot of toys and a lot of other programs. I also play a game with those. It's like, I'll hit the sound, can you identify what it is, to kind of take it another way there. There's all kinds of programs. This is Leonard. But what I like about Leonard, hello, Leonard.
Hello, Leonard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was working with a little boy, that's why I want to show you Leonard, because I love Leonard. I was working with, he's going to keep talking to me though, so I can't keep him on, because he'll keep repeating what I say as I talk. I was working with a little boy who's 9 years old, who had a brain tumor. And as a result of that, his speech was very dysarthric. It was really difficult for him. And because of that, he was very bright, very age appropriate, and he knew he sounded different. And it was really hard for him to talk to people because he knew he sounded different. He would come to me, and he really trusted me after a while, and he would talk the whole time. He'd be like, "Okay, can we focus on something else?" Because he just wanted to talk because he knew I understood him. Well, I brought Leonard out one day, and he started talking. He was cracking up, and all of a sudden he just stopped. And he's like, "I don't like the way he talks." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, he talks funny." And I said, "Well, how can we fix that?" And he spent an hour working on his speech. and trying to make his voice more clear. The speech therapist, I ran to get the speech therapist. I'm like, you got to see this. He was so motivated to talk to my little furry friend that he had never done with a person before. Because the furry friend, there was no judgment, he was just imitating back what he said. And at the end of that, he was talking so much clearer by the end of that session because he could hear himself, he could hear it repeated, and he knew what he had to do to make it clearer. So he uses Leonard all the time now in therapy. There's a whole bunch of programs out there like that will do that voice back. Some of them are scary. There's monsters and there's a weird tomcat in there. Talking Tom. Leonard, the kids all love Leonard for some reason. But Leonard also, you can scratch him. You can tickle him. He bites. All these things on here. That's what happens is, and I can't do it in here because I don't have it, but all those little things you can use too. And there's a little pinwheel on there, and when you actually blow into the microphone, the pinwheel will spin, which I thought was amazing. The first time I realized, I'm like, you can actually blow into the iPad and it makes the pinwheel spin. There's a couple other programs like that. I don't have one, but there's a candle like that. They blow into it and it blows out the candle. So for kids who are working on that blowing sound, blowing motion, there's programs out there that will do that. You can also he eats, you can feed him, he takes drinks. It's really a fun, and I think that was 99 cents. It's really a fun program. Vocal Zoo is kind of what it sounds. It's similar. There's a lot of these programs that are similar.
Cat.
That's good sound. What's funny about this one, I gotta find it. There are animals on here that no one's ever heard of. I'm not going to find them now. It's like a Quetel, Quetzel. I'm like, yeah, that's good. We'll just skip over him.
Chimpanzee.
So that it just goes through. And again, nice pictures, realistic pictures. There's animal fun. It's
Mountain goat.
This one you can actually do some spelling.
UNTAINGOAT. Mountain goat. Tiger.
And again, we can get it to spell.
TIGER.
Okay. How do we do it in time? I'm going to show you now, the next time I'm going to show you is a bunch of writing programs. Now again, this is where I have a little girl that I was working with, just a little 8-year-old with Down syndrome, who came to me. She was in a regular second grade class, doing really, really well in school, was really working on handwriting. Handwriting was a big struggle. She could spell, she could read, she knew her words, but she was having difficulty writing. So she came to me the first time, and I gave her a crayon and some paper, and I said, let's see how you write. And that paper and crayon went flying across the room. No, writing. I'm like, okay, let's do the shaving cream. I brought out all my OT tricks, and how else are we going to try writing? And she absolutely hated writing. So I brought out the iPad one day. And we just used our finger first. And this is a program called Little Skywriters, and it has this little airplane. And you take it around the letters. And this one won't let you do it wrong. So you have to make the letters right. So she would sit with this for hours if I let her. She loved doing this on the iPad, would do the letters. So then we're like, okay, she learned, she could do all the letters, she got it. So as soon as she came to OT, she'd be like, iPad, let's do iPad. I'm like, oh, first we're going to write. no, writing. I said, first we're going to write, then we'll do the iPad. So it would go back and forth. And first we started with her finger on this, and then I had a stylus. I think I have one in there. It just looks like a little pen. So we worked on some writing that way. And then we could go back and forth between paper. It'd be first 5 minutes on the paper, and then we'll use iPad. It would go back and forth. Well, after a couple of months, it would be like, okay, we were up to like 20 minutes on paper, and then 5 minutes on iPad, and then back. And we were able to go back and forth because she got it. She was so motivated by writing her letters on the iPad that it was like, okay, I get this now. And then we were able to get her back. So the next time I gave her a pencil and paper, I didn't have to duck. I could just put it on the table and she would sit and write. So it was a way to kind of motivate her. And again, why she would do it on the iPad and not on paper, and a lot of it was the same thing. It's something about the iPad that was just fascinating to her. This is a program called Doodle Buddy. And again, so first we can just write, you know, anything you do with your finger, you can kind of draw with Doodle Buddy. So we do some letters. We're working on, you know, E. We're working on some, you know, just kind of doing letters free form on here, just kind of drawing on here. So that, I mean, I do that with some kids. I have kids, especially my little ones. I'm working with a little guy right now who's almost 3, and if you give him a crayon, what do you suppose he wants to do with it all the time? Thinks the crayons make good snacks still. He can't, you know, he gets the idea, but he just, for some reason, he doesn't put anything else in his mouth, but you give him a crayon, he wants to eat it. But now he knows too, because he'll give it to me and I'll go. And I go, yeah, okay. And, you know, trying to get him away from that. But he will, so we're working on, you know, basic lines. He'll do it on this. You give him a crayon after a few minutes, then if I give him a crayon, he'll do it. He's kind of getting it. But it's the same thing. If he's not really interested in using tools, he's not really interested in the actual writing on paper and things, but he'll do some of those things on the iPad. So we're seeing if we can teach him the concepts and the idea, the motor ability on the iPad, and then trying to keep going back to the paper and being able to get him to do that on paper. But what I love about Doodle Buddy is we have a lot of kids, you know, it's holiday time, and every preschool class and every early education class at holiday time loves to do, you know, let's all color a pumpkin, let's all paint a pumpkin, let's all make a pumpkin card. At Valentine's Day, it's let's all make hearts for mom. Well, I have kids who, you know, we can do that hand over hand, and they do, and we do it hand over hand, but you really wonder, what are they really getting out of that? So with one finger, they can make a Halloween picture, so I can change it. We have all kinds of stamps here. We can put little witches. You can have it without the sound effects, too. I usually turn my sound effects off on this because that's a little creepy. So I made a little Halloween picture in a couple of minutes using the fingers. You know, they could use the whole hand. I have kids who'll do that. They use their whole hands and keep going on it. But then there's also a way, so I'm going to erase that. And again, there's also ways then that I can put text on that, and then I can email it. I can take a picture of it. I can put that in my picture file on here. I can then email it to mom. I can print. One of the problems with the iPads, unless you have a WhisperNet printer, you can't actually print off of them. There's only one type of printer. They're WhisperNets. I don't have one. But what I do when I want to print something is I just email it. So I'll have the kid make their little pumpkin decoration. And then I will email it to myself, and then we can then go print it. So that we use a lot for especially around holiday time, especially for the kids. And we'll do the other ways as well, so we're not replacing the things that the other kids are doing or other ways of doing it. It's just adding one more way of doing it. So instead of somebody coloring their pumpkin hand over hand, they were able to do something independently just by touching the screen. So we're looking for, you know, kids to be independent wherever we can. There's lots of different drawing programs. This is just a glitter one. So as we move your finger, and it's kind of, if you remember Etch-a-Sketch, you just then shake it. You're supposed to shake it, and it's supposed to go away when you shake it. There we go. So as you make something, as you shake it, you can kind of get rid of it that way. There's a bunch of different handwriting programs on here. This is one I use again with some of my older kids. Connect the dots are really big in early ages. So this is, and again, I do this really interactively. What do you think this could be? I have no idea. So then we stop.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
If you do it wrong,
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17.
we have cheese.
Cheese.
But for kids who are just learning counting, kids who are just learning numbers, because we have both numbers and there's an alphabet one on there. So I use that a lot, again, with kids who may not have the control, or they get frustrated, because if they're doing it in a book and they can't quite follow, they're going to get frustrated because their picture doesn't look like anything it's supposed to. When you're done, it's going to look like what it was supposed to, so it kind of gives them that success when they're done there. There are, what are we doing here? Lots of games that I do with kids. Again, depending on the age, I'm going to show you, since it's Halloween weekend, a puzzle. I got to pick an easy one. Let's hope that one is. Okay, so I have a lot of kids, again, and I don't know, the kids that you guys are seeing, but we do puzzles and they look at it, and I've had kids, again, who are very physically involved, who will hold that piece in their hand and you give it to them and stare right at where it goes, but they cannot get it in where it goes. So this is the same kind of concept, so we can just kind of drag things where they need to be and kind of do some puzzles that way. So it's just another way of doing puzzles. And also I have the kids who, puzzle pieces may go everywhere. So there's a few different, I brought that one up because it's Halloween, but there's this one also. And again, it's just dragging and putting the pieces in. It won't let you do it wrong. If you try to go the wrong place, nothing's going to happen, so you have to move it.
B says B, like bear.
So again, I look at this as not to totally replace a wooden puzzle, because we still want kids to have that and those manipulation skills and moving it. But for the kid that's just not going to work for them, of trying to give them another way of doing those same concepts and of teaching those same things, of just giving a different way to access that media.
Welcome to Elmo's Monster Maker. Oh, to start playing, touch one of the monsters with your finger. Oh, come on in, monsters.
I can't smell or see.
So again, we're teaching body parts for kids.
I should go. To give your monster a nose, all your nose goes. You can keep
And again, this is what we're really interactive. Those eyes! So we can try again. There we go, now we have eyes. Is that a nose? What is that?
Elmo nose.
Definitely not a nose.
Thank you.
There we go. And we can give them hats.
Elmo thinks your monster wants to
And then again, to make this engaging, so now we're going to dance with our monsters, and we'll get up with the kids who can get up and dance, and so I use, what preschooler and toddler doesn't love Elmo? So that's, again, a nice one. And it's a nice way to do body parts, because a lot of kids, how many times did we say, show me your nose, show me your nose? And the kid's like, I don't really care where my nose is. But they'll always find Elmo's nose and want to give him different ones and kind of playing around with that. There's another one for your Sesame Street fans. This one's a little different.
Boy, am I hungry. Where's the waiter?
I do not know. I will check for you, sir.
I'm a big Grover fan.
No, it's him.
Oh, you are so right. It is me. Ah, ha, 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 ha. What can I get you today, sir?
Well, I'm in a bit of a hurry, so I'll just have the special.
A very fine choice. One special coming right up. Today's special is fruit salad. First, we need.
Okay, so this is a different way to use the iPad. Now instead of touching or doing anything, I actually have to lift my iPad and I have to move it to catch. Yeah.
One. Uh-oh. 2, 3, 4. 4 apples. Now we need 1 orange. Catch, catch, catch. 1 orange. Last but not least, we need 2 bananas. Ready, go. 1, 2 bananas. You have caught 7 ingredients all together.
So again, that's just a different way. I'm going to show you one other one, unless you want to continue to watch Grover and you'll see it. So it's using the iPad now instead of actually touching. You're actually having to use your eye-hand coordination, your motor skills a little bit more because you're going to have to now control the iPad to do that. There's another program very similar to that that I'm going to show you. This is a maze. Okay, so now again, you can see the little numbers there. Now I have to use, I'll try to do this, see if I can watch up there and turn this. I actually have to move the iPad to get the numbers.
3, 4.
You get the idea. But again, so it's now using this instead of using a paper and pen to kind of follow through and along. Just a different way, again. I'm really cautious as to who I do that with because the iPads are fragile. I do have a nice big rubber case for the kids if I'm going to do that with, so we don't have to worry about that. They are, you know, I have the iPads that I use with kids are usually in some kind of case. They do make a case, I can't think of the name right now, the Autobach or something along those lines that is supposed to be totally self-destructive, that you can drop, that you can stomp on, that's been tested underwater, that is really supposed to protect your iPad. I was at a child care facility one day and I was using this with a child and I put it on the shelf and somebody came by, apparently the coat was under it and grabbed that coat and we saw my iPad go flying across the air. You know, you're in one of those cartoon moves trying to get there in time. Didn't make it, went splat on the floor, the whole room went silent. As I picked it up, going, please work, and it still worked. Wouldn't recommend doing that to anybody, but they can take a little bit of dropping. But again, most of the time, we really make sure they're secure because it is a fragile tool. A couple other programs I'm just going to kind of run through. We have a few more minutes. I'm going to run through a bunch of the games that I have on here. I have games for different ages, so I'm going to try to show you just real quickly some of them.
Diamond.
That's not what I wanted.
Where is the rectangle?
So again, kids who are just learning shapes.
Star? Touch the circle.
What I like about this,
Hexagon.
just if you do it wrong, it actually gives you feedback. A lot of the programs, if you do something wrong, it doesn't do anything about it. This one actually does some nice self-correction.
Where is the
And it applauds. We all need applause. So that's a shape one. There is...
Monkey, preschool, lunchbox. This monkey only wants the biggest fruit. Touch the
Again,
biggest
working
fruit.
on those concepts.
Super cool. Oh no, this monkey's lemon broken to pieces. Can you put it back together? Great job. Touch all the red fruit.
What I like about this program, because, I mean, I have lots of kids with short attention span, so this one changes fast. And each time you do something, a different activity is going to come up. And then you get to pick your stickers.
Touch the fruit that starts with the letter
Laugh out loud.
This is, I actually had just got this one, so as a following direction. So a lot of times, I don't know if you guys ever play Simon Says with kids. Simon Says, if you're working with young kids, it is amazing what kids will do for Simon that they won't do for you. So if you're trying to get them to do something, and I've done this with countless toddlers and preschoolers, give them directions, and they'll look at me and I say, Simon says, move your chair to the table. And they'll all run and get their chairs and move them to the table. Simon says, pick up your crate. And for some reason, if you're playing it as Simon Says, kids will do things. I had a little boy years ago that I was working with who was born without thumbs and had major reconstructive surgery to build his thumbs. And we're really working on getting him to do things with his hands. Now, I had come up with every single thing in the world to try to get this kid to isolate and point. One day we were playing Simon Says with some other things. I'm like, Simon says thumbs up. And he's like, Simon says index fingers up, pointers up. And he's like, Simon says touch fingers. And he's like, this is great. Okay, great. Simon told him to do it, he was in. So this following directions game I have found to be similar. So if you're working on basic directions with kids to put it into a game, so it's the iPod's telling them to do it. For some reason, kids will do it for the iPad that won't do it for me. Again, just another way of doing that. We've all played memory games, with the little cards that end up everywhere. This is the same kind of idea. I won't actually do it, but you get the idea. Anybody ever hear of Angry Birds? Come on, no one's heard of Angry Birds? Okay, I thought so. Angry Birds, I do some of this with some of the older kids, and I rationalize it because you're learning geometry, you're learning physics. You have to figure out those angles as to how you're going to knock those birds down. I just updated, so I really was at a much higher level than this. But again, so you have to pull that little bird. A lot of the kids, I'm sure lots of you have played this game. It's addicting. But again, a lot of times I will use this for some of my older kids. But again, we're looking at that finger isolation. They have to figure out when to pull, when to release, how hard to do it. As you get into the higher levels, you start looking at, you have to use two hands to do some of the things. So you have to start using some strategy. There's another program similar called Cut the Rope. Again, this is really starting to feed in with some of the older kids looking at logic skills, looking at the first steps on here are going to be pretty easy, but you'll get the idea. So you have to figure out where to cut the rope to feed the frog. Okay. One more category I'm going to show you real quick are my books. So the iPads can also be used as a reader. And this is Toy Story. It'll take a minute.
Andy was a young boy with a big imagination. He loved playing with all his toys, but his favorite was a cowboy doll named Sheriff Woody.
And then to turn the page, we just swipe. One finger swipe turns the page.
And when no one was around, Andy's
What I
toys
like
came
about
to
the
life.
books is a whole set of books on here that you could actually record your own voice as well, so it doesn't have to be the voice. But what's really cool about the Disney books is that they can also become coloring books. So I can now color.
You have to stay inside the lines.
Yeah, you really, but you can't do this. This is how I stay inside the line. So now you can just do this and it will color everything the colors that they want them to be. I've always been an outside the box kind of person. So you have kids again, and there's all kinds of coloring book apps on here as well that you can download. So it's a book that also has different games in it. It has some different, my favorites.
Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. I am Sam. I am Sam.
You get to turn the pages, it's just a finger swipe.
That's Sam I am. That's Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am.
There are different apps out there where you can download libraries of books, and again, depending on what you want to use them for, you can have them that the child has to read, that you can read them to them, that you can program your voice, that you can add the coloring books, whatever, into those. So there's all kinds of things. What I have found really that the iPad is, it's not for everybody. I mean, you have to kind of look at what it is you're using, what skills you're trying to work on. I love the communication apps. I like a lot of the games too for some of the kids as a motivator. So for some children that I'm using it with, it's a communication device. For some children I'm using it with, it's a writing tool. For some children I'm using it with, it's, I've had kids, real young kids that were first learning motor skills and we're getting them on their hands and knees and they don't really want to be there, or we're working on pull to stand and getting up. Nothing, I've tried every toy in the world to get that kid motivated to get up to stand to get it. Put the iPad up there, like, I'm in, and they're climbing right up. So I use it as a motivator for physical skills at times. I use it as a reward for some children. If you do this that are a little hard, then at the end of the session, you can play, you can pick. With a lot of kids, it's like, first we're going to play what I want to play, then you can pick a game, then we're going to go back to what I want to do, and then you pick a game and kind of really use it, kind of some back and forth things. So that's kind of concludes our time. If anybody has questions, you're welcome to come up afterwards for a minute or two. I do have some handouts that have, if you're interested, that have all the apps that I have and that I use on my iPads. They're available somewhere. Kelly has them.
Can we take just one question and then we'll call it a day? Question.
Yes.
How often do you look for new apps, like throughout the week?
Sometimes daily, sometimes it'll come up. People come to me. What happens is I'm the app person I'm the iPod person at our agency. So people will come to me and say, I need an app that does, and I'll be like, all right, let's see what I can find. In the handout on the back page, there are some resources that I use. I find the iTunes store to be one of the least, not the most helpful for finding apps. What I usually do if I want to find an app for a specific thing, I use Google. Google is my friend. And I will Google best apps for handwriting for a 4-year-old. And we'll get a list. Best app for whatever I'm looking for. And usually that will link you to different recommendations. The other thing, just real quickly, I always recommend when you're looking at apps, there are lots of apps out there. So if you put in piano, you're going to get 100 pianos. Be sure to read the reviews because some of the piano apps are excellent. The one I have, I would highly recommend. Some of them do nothing. Some of them will shut your system down all the time. So make sure you're reading the reviews on your apps because there are a lot of apps that will just freeze constantly and they become more frustrating than productive.
On behalf of CBDC, we'd like to present you with a t-shirt, and thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you, my pleasure.